So, we're having more conversations about the Vancouver Canucks and the trade market, because yesterday afternoon on Canucks Central with Satyr Shah and Bick Nazar, we had ourselves Daily Face-Off analyst and writer Frank Seravalli go out there and give the scoop as to what the Vancouver Canucks are doing. Now, this aligns pretty well with some of the other trade updates we have seen with the Vancouver Canucks over the past few days, so let's dive into it here. We're going over the Sportsnet tweet as well as an article published on CanucksArmy.com to really dive into this conversation and bring up what other options the Vancouver Canucks may have. So, let's take a look at this right here. The tweet from Sportsnet reads this. Though a trade might not be imminent, the Vancouver Canucks management is already trying to get on top of the trade market. And if you look at the video itself, you read the quote here. Seravalli says, "I believe the Canucks are already making calls and trying to understand what the market looks like." Now, these two updates don't necessarily give us any info as to what the Vancouver Canucks are looking at. It's just saying, hey, the Canucks are already scouring the market like vultures, trying to see what deals are on the horizon and what bodies are there for the taking. So, to help us out, we're going over onto an article published by Clark Corson on CanucksArmy.com that dives into some of these extra comments and gives a little bit of analysis as to where the Vancouver Canucks could actually be focusing their sights on. This will be linked in the description as well. NHL insider Frank Seravalli recently mentioned on Canucks Central that he believes the Canucks front office is actively exploring the market for defensive reinforcements. They're already making calls and trying to understand what the market looks like to improve this team's defense. Okay, not surprising, considering the video we made just a few hours ago went over how Carson Soucy and his pairing were some of the worst players on the ice yesterday. It's not surprising. So Hughes Hronek, you can keep them as pairing number one. If you wanted to, let's say, move Erik Brannstrom up to the second pairing, I honestly don't think that that's a terrible idea if you can find a right-handed defenseman that he can actually play with that can hold top 4 minutes. This might be where the Vancouver Canucks are interested in setting their sights on, whilst rotating Soucy and Myers and Forbort and Desharnais somewhere on the third pairing. Now, if you're not really too believing in Erik Brannstrom, that's totally fine. You can think of him as one of these guys that could rotate in that process as well, but just having the options there, not being forced to play Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers an extended amount of time, that I think would be helping the Canucks set themselves up for the most success possible. Getting an extra guy, a legitimate top 4 guy, to diversify those minutes seems to be where a lot of these conversations are heading towards. So, with all this in mind, let's head over back to the article and talk about some of the other quotes here. They want to continue to push the envelope, and that should surprise no one given the volume of deals that Patrik Allvin has made. This is where the article dives into some names. 2 potential targets for GM Patrik Allvin are Calgary's Rasmus Andersson and Pittsburgh's Marcus Pettersson. Now, I just wanted to say this first here. Like, before we dive into the analysis of these players and if they're good, if they're bad, whatever, would that not be just the funniest thing on the planet if the Vancouver Canucks grabbed themselves yet another player who happens to be named Pettersson, having Elias Pettersson, and Marcus Pettersson? At some point in the near future, when all these guys are on the team, that would be so funny. Pettersson to Pettersson to Pettersson. Imagine that on a penalty killing unit or something. The Pettersson pairing. Obviously, part of the reason we're having this conversation is because of the memes, but hey, Marcus Pettersson is listed as a legitimate target here by the Canucks Army article, so I did want to dive into a little bit of a conversation about that. But before talking about Pettersson, let's actually talk about the other guy first. Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames is written about here in the article that Andersson, 28, currently leads the Flames in points with 10 through 8 games. He does? What the hell? He's number 1 on the team in points? That's crazy. And he's a highly attractive $4.5 million cap hit player with 2 years left on his deal. The right-shot D-man from Sweden, logging just under 16 minutes of even-strength ice time per night, is reportedly on the trade block and would be valuable to the Canucks. However, there may be some sort of a trade fatigue between Calgary and Vancouver after multiple deals last season, and trading a defenseman of Andersson's caliber within the division could be challenging. Now, for Rasmus Andersson, I think he's probably like the best guy that could even enter this sort of a conversation. There aren't really any other dudes around the NHL that I think are better than him that could realistically be talked about as some sort of a target here, mostly because of the Calgary Flames and their hot start. A lot of people were going out there and projecting Calgary to being one of the worst teams in the Pacific Division, myself included. You know, we had these ideas floating around. Oh yeah, they traded everybody away. They're rebuilding. Their team is so young. They only have Kadri and Huberdeau and everybody else. But they've been winning. And Rasmus Andersson is legitimately at the top of the team in points, which is ridiculous. So having this kind of a guy added on to the Canucks, honestly, it makes Filip Hronek's job on the top pairing expendable. Like, you don't have to do Hughes Hronek anymore if you have somebody of Andersson's caliber who is arguably as good offensively as Hronek is, and stable enough defensively too. Having Hronek and Brannstrom on the second pairing, I think, would be crazy. Like, imagine the reads they could be getting off of each other. Sure, Erik Brannstrom is no Quinn Hughes, but he's kind of built in that same mold where he does like to generate offense through his skating and his movement around the O-zone and how he likes to make these passes that a lot of people don't really expect, and it catches opponents off guard and he gets assists that way. I mean, I just like that possibility. Rasmus Andersson, right? The price would be high, for sure. Very, very high. But you have to start thinking about it. If the Canucks are going to be competing for a playoff spot like they had the highest Stanley Cup odds yesterday or 2 days ago or whenever it was, if the Canucks are going to be competing for a spot this year, do you decide, okay, screw it, we'll trade Tom Willander. We'll get a cheap player like Rasmus Andersson, who is a lot better than a $4.5 million contract. Because realistically, if Willander ends up becoming like Andersson at some point in his future, you're probably happy with that. But try to speed up the process. Maybe that's something that you could dive into. Anyways, let's go over to the other guy in this conversation. Marcus Pettersson is also talked about as a potential Vancouver Canucks target. This is what the article dives into and says. Pettersson is 28, is in the final year of his contract with the Penguins, carrying a $4-point-something million cap hit, 4 flat, excuse me. This season he has got 5 points in 8 games. Both players are logging significant minutes for their current teams and would provide an immediate boost to the Canucks defense, especially given Soucy's slow start alongside of Tyler Myers. Any move of significance is going to come at a cost and will require some cap maneuvering with the Canucks backed up in the stands. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to read more about this. This is all in the Canucks Army piece. It's all there by Clark Corson. He did a pretty good job here. But Marcus Pettersson, straight up, I didn't really think that he was as good as Rasmus Andersson, but he's still all right. I mean, the point production speaks for itself, 5 points in 10 games. Also, Marcus Pettersson had the really nice assist against the Canucks in the other game on Saturday. So, of course, I think Canucks fans are already a little bit familiar with what Marcus Pettersson is capable of doing. He plays his gaps well, he gets shots through, he makes good decisions on the blue line in the O-zone. Solid guy, but in my opinion, inferior to Rasmus Andersson. However, of course, if the Canucks are looking for a player whom they can rely on, they can give a little bit more of a break to Soucy and Myers for, they can rely a little bit more in their top 4, Marcus Pettersson could be that guy. I mean, if you look at his ice time, in the Vancouver game, he had 22 minutes, which isn't actually a season high. He had 24 minutes against the Detroit Red Wings to open up the season. So Marcus Pettersson is definitely capable of playing those minutes. It's just a matter of whether or not the Canucks would be interested in getting yet another Pettersson on their squad. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about Frank Seravalli and his trade update for the Vancouver Canucks. What are your thoughts on these two guys, Andersson, Pettersson, 2 sons, 2 Swedes, being potential ideas for the Vancouver Canucks? The article will be linked in the description, as well as the audio hit of Frank Seravalli. If you're a fan of either the Flames or the Penguins, what are your thoughts on these ideas, and would you be interested in trading your D-men to Vancouver? What exactly would you want in return? What kind of assets do you think the Canucks should give y'all to make this work? Any prospects, any picks, any other roster players you think would be suitable in this type of a deal? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. It's all your floor to get the ball rolling. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.